Welcome to the Deep Dive podcast channel.
Great to be here.
Today we're looking into something that, well, it might feel a bit unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
It's this experience of loneliness that can sometimes, surprisingly, go hand in hand with being seen by others as beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite the paradox, isn't it?
It really is. It seems counterintuitive, but we want to explore that inner world, the one behind the admired exterior.
And it's a sensitive topic.
Definitely. We
Yeah.
want to create a space here that feels, safe for reflection. If any of this resonates with you listening, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.
But always with that sense of emotional safety in mind, of course.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are really curious about human psychology, about getting beyond the surface,
This is for you.
yeah, this deep dive is a chance to maybe gain some valuable insights into this often overlooked part of the human experience.
It really is overlooked. I mean, society often paints this picture, right? That beauty is somehow a direct line to happiness and connection.
The golden ticket, almost.
Exactly. But the reality for many attractive individuals can be quite different. They might report feeling, well, quite disconnected.
And that really highlights the difference between just being admired, maybe looked at, and being truly understood.
Precisely. There's a quote from someone, a client I recall, who said, "They see my face, not my soul."
Wow. That captures it perfectly. That feeling of being hyper-visible but unseen.
It speaks volumes, and it often connects back to our earliest relationships, you know? Attachment theory gives us a lens here.
How so?
Well, those first bonds, they really shape our blueprint for connection later on.
Okay.
So if your caregivers were maybe emotionally unavailable or critical, or perhaps their love felt conditional.
Like, I'll love you if...
Exactly. If you're good, if you look nice, if you don't cause trouble, that can install these deep beliefs.
Beliefs like...
Like, to be loved, I have to be what they want me to be, or my real feelings are too much, or maybe not enough.
Okay, so connect that to beauty. If someone gets heaps of praise for their looks, but they already have this underlying belief about needing to perform.
It can actually deepen the disconnection. That external validation for appearance gets confused with genuine emotional attunement, with really being seen and accepted.
So the attention reinforces the image, not the person inside,
That's a huge part of it. And it can lead straight into what we call objectification.
where the person becomes more of a symbol or a fantasy than a whole human being.
Precisely. They're valued for what they represent, beauty, status maybe, rather than who they are, with all their complexities and inner life.
And inside, what's happening then?
Often a real internal conflict. You've got this intense external visibility. Everyone sees you, maybe comments on you.
You're noticed.
Yeah, noticed. But emotionally, you feel invisible, like the real you isn't getting through. Seen, but not met.
That sounds incredibly isolating. And is that where the false self comes in? As a kind of coping mechanism?
It often is. It's like a shield, way to navigate the world when you feel your authentic self isn't safe or acceptable. It's about presenting a version that gets approval.
What might that look like, practically speaking?
It can be many things. Maybe being overly agreeable, never rocking the boat, hiding sadness or anxiety.
Downplaying intelligence, perhaps?
Yes, that's common too. Or striving to be low maintenance, never having needs, always being easygoing.
So you end up performing connection rather than actually feeling it,
You got it. It's an act. And this ties very closely into people-pleasing.
which isn't just about being nice, right? It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. Especially in this context, it's often a subtle survival strategy. It's about managing other people's perceptions to maintain a sense of emotional safety.
Trying to control how others feel about you so you feel okay.
Exactly. And for people seen as attractive, there can be this immense pressure to always be on, always pleasant, always smiling,
Praise for being nice or sweet.
rather than being real. And there's often a huge fear of showing negative emotions or, setting boundaries. What if they get rejected?
It sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
Constantly managing, anticipating.
It's incredibly draining. And it leads to this profound emotional depletion. Compliments can't fill that void. They just bounce off the surface.
Because they're aimed at the performance, not the person feeling depleted underneath.
Precisely. And underneath that performance, there's often a lot of shame.
Shame, how does that fit in?
It's the shame tied to the false self, beliefs like, if they really knew me, the real messy me, they'd leave.
Or, I'm only loved for what I give or how I look, not for who I actually am.
Yes. Or, my emotions are just too much for people to handle. And the shame often connects back to those early times where appearance maybe got all the attention, but emotional needs were ignored or dismissed.
It's making me think. can being idealized actually be traumatic in its own way?
That's a really important point. Idealization feels good on the surface, like you're being cherished, but fundamentally, someone idealizing you isn't seeing you.
They're seeing their own projection.
Exactly. They're falling for an idea, a fantasy they've projected onto your appearance. The real, complex, flawed human being gets missed,
And the consequence of that.
feeling profoundly unseen, even in relationships. Resentment can build up. Why don't they see the real me? And again, deep loneliness, even when you're supposedly connected, it echoes not being fully seen as a child.
So this really clarifies why being wanted or desired isn't the same as feeling loved.
Not at all. There's a huge difference between biological attraction or being valued for status and that deep relational safety of being loved for your inner world, your vulnerabilities included.
What do people often experience in this situation?
Common themes are being sexualized but not emotionally held. Being pursued, maybe, but for superficial reasons, status looks not for depth.
And feeling misunderstood when they try to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. Like sharing an insecurity and having it brushed off or met with confusion because it doesn't fit the idealized image. That gap, that's where loneliness thrives.
This brings us to self-worth. Can you unpack the difference between that and self-esteem, especially here?
Sure. Self-esteem is often tied to external things, achievements, approval, how you look. It can fluctuate. Self-worth is deeper. It's the intrinsic sense of, I matter just as I am.
Regardless of performance or appearance.
Exactly. But when beauty is overvalued, either by the person or society, self-worth can become conditional. I'm worthy if I look good. I have value if people admire me.
That sounds like a very fragile foundation.
It is. Because looks change, external validation comes and goes. Healing involves shifting that sense of worth inward, from performance to presence, believing I matter inherently.
And those attachment patterns we talked about earlier, anxious, avoidant, how do they get tangled up in all this?
They get amplified. If someone leans anxious, the need for reassurance might be constant. Fearing any flaw leads to rejection, especially if beauty feels like their main currency.
Okay.
If they lean avoidant, the superficial attention might actually reinforce keeping people at an emotional distance. It feels safer but prevents real intimacy.
And disorganized.
That can be a really confusing mix of desperately wanting closeness but also fearing the vulnerability it requires, especially when navigating that pressure to maintain an image. The performance becomes even more complex.
It sounds like the loneliness felt as an adult can almost be an echo. Like it mirrors the needs of a younger self.
That's a beautiful way to put it, yes. Often that adult loneliness carries the resonance of an inner child who felt ignored or only valued for surface things, not for their true feelings or needs.
So that inner child doesn't need more compliments.
No, they need attunement. They need to feel seen, understood, accepted. They need those internal messages like, I see you. It's okay to not smile. You are enough right now without doing anything.
So healing is about closing that gap.
Yeah.
The gap between the seen external self and the known internal self.
Exactly. It's about integration, reclaiming authenticity.
Which sounds like it involves letting go of needing to be liked all the time.
It does. And finding the courage to name your truth, your feelings, your needs, even if it feels risky. Choosing depth over admiration.
That sounds potentially scary, being truly known after relying on an image.
It can be terrifying, but it's also the only way to truly overcome that deep-seated loneliness. It's where real connection lives.
This is so helpful. If someone's listening and this is hitting home, what are some actual tools, some steps they could take?
Okay, practical things. First, somatic awareness. Notice where you feel loneliness in your body, a tightness, hollowness.
Just noticing.
Yes. Then maybe grounding, feel your feet, notice your breath. Gentle, safe touch like a hand on your heart can be surprisingly powerful.
What else?
Inner child work. Consciously connect with that younger part of you. Speak to them with compassion. Offer the reassurance they didn't get.
Okay, that makes sense.
Boundaries are huge. Learning to say no, expressing needs. This creates space for real relationships, not ones based on you just accommodating others.
Takes practice, I imagine.
Absolutely. Start small. And practice authenticity. Share a small, real thought or feeling in a relatively safe conversation. Ask for presence, not just attention.
And therapy.
Therapy can be invaluable. Having a dedicated space to explore these patterns, understand your needs, and practice relating differently is incredibly supportive. Relational repair happens there.
Great suggestions. We'd have a few questions come up that feel relevant here, like, can someone actually be beautiful and genuinely connected?
Yes, absolutely. But it requires that vulnerability we talked about. moving beyond just relying on the external and daring to show the internal.
What about feeling guilty for being lonely if people admire you?
That's the shame talking. That feeling of, I shouldn't feel this way. Remember, admiration isn't intimacy. Your feelings are valid, period. Loneliness is about unmet connection needs, not external validation levels.
And how can someone start attracting less shallow relationships if that's been the pattern?
By showing up more fully yourself, when you start expressing your real thoughts, values, needs, and setting boundaries around what doesn't feel right, you naturally start filtering for people who appreciate the real you.
That's empowering. And those attachment wounds,
Yeah.
can they really heal later in life?
Yes, definitely. It takes conscious effort, self-awareness, perhaps therapy, and building secure relationships now. But our brains are capable of change. New patterns can be learned.
Is people-pleasing always a trauma response?
Not necessarily always capital T trauma, but it's very often a learned safety mechanism, a way to navigate relationships based on early experiences where that felt necessary for approval or connection. It becomes a habit.
Okay. And lastly, for someone who feels defined by their image, how do they even start figuring out who they are underneath?
That's a journey of self-discovery. Start by noticing. Who are you when no one's watching? What genuinely lights you up? What do you care about when you're not trying to impress anyone? It's about tuning inwards, maybe journaling, trying new things just for yourself. Patience is key.
This has been such an insightful conversation, really digging into an experience that I think, as you said, is often hidden.
Mm-hmm.
The main takeaway feels like, well, beauty doesn't grant immunity from loneliness. It can even mask those deeper needs sometimes.
That sums it up well.
And if you, listening, have found yourself surviving through external validation, please hear this. It's not a flaw. It's actually a testament to your deep human desire for love and belonging.
Absolutely. It shows how much connection matters.
And you do have a choice. You can start to move maybe slowly from performing towards revealing your authentic self one step at a time.
It's a process of reclaiming yourself.
The love we're all really searching for, it seems, is about being met, truly met on that deeper level, not just seen on the surface. So maybe just reflect on that today. What does feeling truly met mean to you?
A powerful question to sit with.